Okay, so for this video, we are going to discuss some concept on calculation, right? More on calculation. We are not going to draw any graph anymore. Okay, but we are going to try to do some calculation. So in general, for the calculation part, you need to know how to calculate the measure of central tendency. What's the meaning of central tendency? That means either mean, median, or mode. We call it central tendency. And then we need to calculate, okay, the measure of spread. Okay, that includes of range, interquartile range, variance, and standard deviation. All right. Then after that, you also need to know how to calculate the mean and standard deviation, including the group data. Okay, and also using the coding method. So there are many things to cover here, and of course, for this video, we are not able to cover all. So for this video, we might only cover the main part, which is the mean and also mode first. Okay, or maybe the mean first, and then next video we need to cover median and so on. Right? Okay, so in general, let's have a look for some basic idea on the word average. Right, so last time when you see the word average, most of you maybe will think that, oh, average is like mean. Okay, but in A level, average is not a mean. Average can be three different things, right? It can be either the mean, can be the mode, and can be the median. It can be either one of them. All right, so we call it as average. So average doesn't mean the mean. In general, last time when we learned, right, the general term for average means mean. Okay, but when you learn statistics now, you should know that actually average can come from any of these three. It can be the mean, can be the mode, can be the median. All right, so when we want to describe a data, then we usually will use average. So as an example, if let's say I'm having a group of students, right, maybe 50 students in the class, and then usually when some people asking, hey, how are your students' performance? Right, so in general, if you want to describe the student's performance, right, then you have to use the average value, okay, to rate to tell the student's performance. Okay, so we call it as a measure of central tendency. Usually we'll use mean, okay, to denote the whole data. But again, there are some special cases that we might need to use mode or median to represent the data. All right. Okay, so this is what we call as average. So remember, average can be mean, can be mode, can be median. And after that, we are having two measures of the variability. So variability means that how wide your data are distributed or spread out. Okay, so we call it as range and also standard deviation. All right, so no matter how, for today, we are going to focus only on mode and also the mean. Okay, so we come mode first. Okay, mode is the value that occurs most often. So I think this one you should know already. Okay, and then if let's say we talk about model class, then we are looking for the group with the greatest frequency density. So in the histogram, it is the highest bar. All right, so this is what we call as mode. It's very simple. Okay, so I hope that you remember this, especially for the frequency density one, because from now onwards, most of the time you are having interval with unequal width, right? So you need to consider the frequency density for the mode, but not the frequency anymore. All right. Okay. Then next we go for the mean. Okay. So for the mean part, generally we need to do some calculation. All right. So the mean is the most commonly used average. All right. So how are we going to get the mean? So we have to add all the data together and divide it by n. So when we summarize it, we'll write it like this. This is a formula. General formula. All right. So the sign here, this sign, we call it as summation. All right, so summation of x means that you add all the x together divided by the total number of x. Okay, and then if let's say you are having a table, the frequency distribution with frequency 1, then you have to use the summation of fx divided by summation of f. Okay, so what does this mean? This one means that you take f multiply x first, then add all of them together. All right. Okay, and then for the interval, right, the x here will be usually the midpoint. If let's say they give you a class interval, right, so the x will be the midpoint when you want to calculate the mean. Okay, Right, so here they said already, x is what? X is the midpoint, which is lower class boundary plus upper class boundary divided by 2. Okay, so I think all these are quite basic. Yeah. All right, so this is what we have. So in A-level, right, when they want you to calculate the mean, there are a few things that you need to link them with. Calculate mean can be very simple, but usually for A-level question, they will want to combine some extra thing, okay, with the mean part. As an example, like maybe they will actually try to combine histogram, unequal with histogram that you learned before together with the mean. That's the thing. Okay, or maybe they will actually try to link, or maybe they will combine frequency distribution. Okay, the table, the cumulative distribution table, cumulative frequency this table, and combine it with the mean. All right, so it makes the question a bit more challenging. All right, so usually it will not be a very straightforward type of question. Okay, so no matter how we'll start and have a look at how are we going to calculate the mean for different types of pattern of the question. Okay, so we start with the basic one first. Okay, so let's have a look for example 11. So for example 11, they tell you the speeds of 120 vehicle, and after that, these are the results. So they want you to estimate the mean speed of this vehicle. So they want you to calculate the mean. Okay, so to calculate the mean here, okay, every time, again, you need to check and see whether do you need to do adjustment or not for the class boundary. Okay, so you look for the upper value for the first class and also the lower value for the second class, and you see that these two values are different. So when these two values are different, that means you need to do the adjustment. So how to do the adjustment? So the lower value you minus 0.5, upper value you plus 0.5 for all the classes. Okay, so if you look from here, then you have the first class boundary is 20.5 to 25.5, and this one will be 25.5 to 30.5, and so on. Okay, all right, then after that you need to create a column with mid-interval value, or usually I call it as midpoint. So to get the midpoint, you take 20.5 plus 25.5 divided by 2, so you get a 23. So same thing happens for the second one, 5.5 plus 30.5, you get 23. Okay, so maybe for this one, I just show you how to get the value. It is 20.5 plus 25.5 divided by 2. Okay, it comes from the class here actually. All right, so I hope that you can see it. Okay, then after that for frequency part, you just try to copy. All right, so you just copy the frequency. Now you have 22, 48, and so on. Okay, then after that you can create a table with a column with fx. Fx means the frequency multiplied with x. So when you take frequency multiplied with x, you have 506, 1344, and so on. Okay, so the so on here means that you don't fill it up with the dots, you fill it up with the number yourself. All right. Okay, so please complete the table here. Okay, so maybe for this part, I will just write it out for you. How can I get 506? You are taking 23 multiplied with 22. Okay. All right. So if you complete the table correctly without any careless mistake, you try to sum all the frequency here, and that's why you get frequency, the summation of f, summation of frequency. So when you try to sum all this here, you will get 120. So this is for you to check out whether you did any careless mistake or not also. All right. Okay, then for the fx, summation of fx, you 3,800. Okay. All right. Then after that, after you complete this table already, then you can start counting, okay, the mean. So what is the formula for the mean? Summation of fx, which is 3,800 divided by 120, and then you will get the answer. So your answer should be 95 over 3, or you should get and put it into 3 significant figure, which is 31.7. So this is the answer that you should get after you complete the whole table and follow the formula for the mean. Okay, so this example, this particular example is something very straightforward. That means it is a straightforward question. They give you the value, the table, then you just follow the table and try to find out the mean. Okay, it is a straightforward question. All right, so now just a few things that you must let you. Right, so some students will tell me, okay, in exam, they're lazy to draw out this whole table because it might take a longer time. Okay, it's fine. If let's say you don't want to draw this whole table, there are a few things that you must include in your solution if you don't want to draw out the table here. So the first thing is, in your steps, you must shown in your solution all the midpoint in your solution. All midpoint must be shown in your solution. Must be shown in your solution. Usually they will give you 1 mark for this. Okay, all right. And then after that, the second and the third thing is you must show the steps here lah. You have to take the summation of fx divided by summation of f, the value itself. Okay, so this one also must be shown in the solution. Okay, then the rest of all these are no need to show one by one is okay. But what they want is the midpoint itself and then the formula with the value itself. Okay, so don't tell me, can I write out like this? Summation fx divided by summation f and it equals to 31.7. So if let's say you write out like this in your solution, you lost 1 mark. This because you didn't show the number. You only show the formula. So the formula will not be given any mark. Okay, so in A-level, if you want to get some marks, some method marks from the formula, right, you have to substitute the value into the formula to get a mark. Okay, then usually answer will be 1 mark. Okay, now, so some students will ask also, how about if let's say your answer is correct, but you didn't write out the value for the midpoint in your steps? This one, it depends on the examiner. Usually in the marking scheme, they will give you 1 mark for all the midpoints shown. But if let's say you didn't write it out, and then your final answer is correct, then it really depends on the examiner. I don't know whether will she give you the method mark or not for the midpoint. All right, some will give that, I believe, but some I don't think that it will give. Okay, if let's say they want to fully follow the marking scheme. Okay, so these are some small details that you need to know when you want to calculate the mean, okay, for your exam style question. Okay, so example 11, this is a simple one. Not to say simple, but I will say that it is straightforward. Okay, so make sure you complete the table here and try to see whether you can get the answer as what I shown here. All right, okay, so now let us continue to the next example. Okay, so for next example, this is not so straightforward question anymore. Okay, but not too hard also. All right, but generally what they actually involve it with cumulative frequency table. Can you see that? Okay, so now from a cumulative frequency table, they actually want you to calculate the mean. So you have to convert it back into the normal type of frequency. Okay, you have to convert the cumulative frequency, go back to the normal type of frequency. Okay, so how can we do that? So first, you maybe answer the first part of the question first. Okay, so they're asking, how many schools have been 201 and 250 inclusive pupils? So what is 201 until 250? Okay, so the 201 until 250 means this 201 until 250. It belongs to this class, right? This class. Okay, so to get the frequency, how can I get the 2100? Is not the frequency, it is a cumulative frequency. So how can I get the frequency? So you need to do it backward, right? For cumulative frequency, you add all the frequency together, right? You add to get the cumulative frequency. So from cumulative frequency, to get back to the frequency, what you need to do is you minus. Okay, so just to let you have a better idea, when you get the frequency and you want to change it become cumulative frequency, you add them. You add all the frequency to become the cumulative frequency. So in the other way around, if you want to change the cumulative frequency become the frequency, you have to minus. All right. So for part 1, they actually want you to find out the frequency for this class. Okay, so 2100 is actually the cumulative frequency. So to get the frequency, have to minus the previous cumulative frequency, which is minus 1600, and therefore you get 500 here. All right, so the 500 is actually the frequency of this particular class. Okay, so you answer part 1 already. Okay, then for part 2, you see that they actually want you to estimate the mean number of pupils per school. Okay, so now our problem comes already. Okay, so for this class, you know that the class interval is 20 until 250. So you do the same thing for all the classes here. So like for this one, what will be the value for the class interval? It will be from 1 until 100. It is not 0, it is 1. Why? Because in this part in the question, they will tell you that they start from 201. Okay, because 200 belongs to the previous class. So you should start from 201. Okay, so same thing happen here, you should start from 110. Okay, then how about for this one? So for the second class, it should be 101 until 150. You cannot start from 100. Why? Because the 100 is included in the previous class. Okay, right. So the same thing happened here. This one will be 151 to 200. Then you're having 201 to 250. Then 251 to 350. Oh, sorry, my space is not enough. 351 to maybe 450. Then 451 to 600. Okay, so I think the space is a bit small. But never mind, hope that you can squeeze it a bit. Okay, all right. So once you write the class interval, then the next one you need to have the class boundary. So again, how can I check for the class boundary? Look for the upper value for the first class and compare it with the lower value for the second class. These two numbers are not the same. So you need to do the adjustment, right? So it become 0.5 to 100.5. Okay, so 100.5 become 150.5. Then 150.5 to 200.5. Okay, and then the rest, please make sure that you complete. Okay, so for the mid interval value, again, the midpoint. So the midpoint will be 50.5. Okay, then 125.5, 175.5, and so on. Okay, then for the frequency. Okay, so for the frequency, you have to be very careful. All right. Okay, so for the first class, right? So you just follow the first class frequency, which is 200. So to get the next class frequency, you take 800 minus the previous one. So that's why I told you to get back the frequency from cumulative, you need to minus. So you take 800 minus 200, then you get 600. Okay, then 1060 minus 800, you get 800, and so on until you get the frequency for the last class. Okay, and after that, for the fx, you just multiply them. So 10100 and so on. Okay, so after you complete this table, if you didn't do any careless mistake, the summation of frequency should be 5,000. Okay, and the summation of fx should be 133 and then 7500. Okay, so this is the answer for summation of fx. Then after you get all the values completed in the table, then you can use all the information to find the mean. So to find the mean, final answer should be 267.5 or 268 if you want to round it up to 3 significant figures. Alright, so in exam, this answer will be accepted although it is 4 significant figure because it is not a very long decimal number until the calculator cannot finish showing it. Alright, so this is actually the accepted answer. Okay, 0.5 or maybe 0.25, all these are accepted actually. Okay, but if you want it to be safe, of course you can change it become 3 significant figure. Okay, so for the calculation part here, I'm not worried about it. Okay, so but I just want to emphasize to you, you can see that this question is not straightforward question. That means you need to get the frequency correctly first from the cumulative frequency. That's the thing. And also you need to get the class interval first, change it become class boundary, and you can continue the rest of the steps. Okay? Alright, so this is another type of example. That means not straightforward. It is from cumulative frequency table. Okay, so please make sure that you complete the table and get the answer here.
Okay, so for example 13, you can see that there are 5,000 schools, all right, in a certain country, and they give you the cumulative frequency table, all right. Then they show you the cumulative frequency, of course, from here, and also the number of pupils in the school. Okay, so if you compare this with example 12, right, you will realize that the questions are very, very similar, especially this table. The values are exactly the same. Right, so we'll discuss about the difference between example 12 and 13 later, after we complete discussing this one. Okay, all right, so if you look at the table here, the cumulative frequency table, all right, so generally to calculate the mean, you can see here, they want you to calculate an estimate of mean number of pupils per school. Okay, so how can we start? So first of all, from this cumulative frequency table, of course, you also need to get the class interval first. All right, so for this example, they only mention that you are having something from something to smaller equals to 100, and then another value from to smaller equals to 150, and so on. All right, so for this example, the class interval, I will use the value that they provide here. So that means for the first class interval, I will write it as 0 until 100. Okay, so this is for the first class. And the second class here, I will write as 100 until 150. And then from 150 to 200. Then 200 to 250, and so on. Okay, then 250 to 350. Okay, then you can write 350 to 450, and so on. All right, 450 to 600. Okay, so now this is what we have for the class interval, and we are going to check for the class boundary. We need to check and see whether we do we need to add plus and minus 0.5, okay, from the class interval or not to make it become class boundary. So how can we check? Same rules here. You check for the upper value for the first class, and also the lower value for the second class. All right, so if you have a look here, you can see that these two values are actually the same value, which means you no need to do any adjustment to make it become the class boundary. So it will remain as 0 until 100. Okay, so 100 until 150, and then 150 to 200, and so on. All right, so I'm not going to complete the whole table for you. You have to complete here the rest of it. Okay, then how about for the mid-interval value? So again, for the mid-interval value, as an example, first class, you are taking the class boundary 0 plus 100 divided by 2, and therefore you get 50. Okay, so this is the x that you get for this example. Then 150 plus 100 divided by 2, you get 125. Okay, so maybe for your knowledge, I put a small shortcut here, a formula here, which is 0 plus 100 divided by 2. So the same thing applies for the rest of the class. So you just continue with your mid-interval value or the midpoint. All right, then we are going to get the f. So to get the frequency, you need to take the later cumulative frequency minus the current one. So like the first class, we are having 200, right? So you just copy with 200. But for the second class, you need to take 800 minus the 200, and therefore you get 600 for the second class. Okay, how about for the third class? So for the third class is you take 1,600 minus the 800, and therefore you get the 800. All right, so the same thing happened here. You can continue the calculation and try to submit them. Try to add them together, and you should get 5,000, which is the total of the cumulative frequency. All right, so if let's say you didn't get 5,000, that means something wrong in your calculation here. And after that, you take the frequency multiply with the midpoint. So for the first class, frequency multiply with the midpoint, you get 10,000. And for the second class, you have 75,000, and so on. Okay, so if you sum all the fx together, for this example, you should get 133,500. Okay, and after that, after you get all this important information already, then you can start to calculate the mean. So to calculate the mean, it is summation of fx, right? So which is 133,500 divided by 5,000. So from here, you will get the mean, which is 267. Alright, so this is what we have for example 13. Yeah. Alright, so now actually I want you to try to compare example 13 and example 12. Alright, so for example 12, okay, so maybe I can copy down the answer for example 12 here to let you compare them. Okay, so this is example 12 answer. Okay, so this is the example 12 answer and this is example 13. Okay, so please try to compare both of these questions. Okay, although the cumulative frequency table that they give you is exactly the same, right? So what I want you to observe now is try to observe what's the difference between these two. Actually, for these two questions, right, the main thing is about the class interval. Then after that, you get a class boundary. And you can see that because of all the class interval and class boundary a bit different, so you can see that the final answer for the mean is slightly different also. Okay, but the problem comes from the class interval. Okay, so if you observe on example 12 and this is example 13. Okay, why in example 12, right? The class interval, the value that we use is like 1 until 100, then 101 until 150. You can see that all the value here, the lower class interval, start with the value 1 for example 12. But if you observe for example 13, you can see that all the values that we take is start from the 0 one, 200, 250, 350, 450. Okay, so why the same type of question have the difference like this? Okay, so why for example 12 we can make it as the 1, but why for example 13 we make it as 0 only? Alright, so when you look at the question, you have to be very, very careful. Okay, we go back to the question 12, the example 12. I want you to observe the question in part 1. Okay, so can you see that in this question, they actually mentioned that your class interval, the first value here start from 1, 201 to 250. So that's why it gives you a hint that all your class must start with 1. Therefore, you have to follow the pattern. Okay, so that the whole question here, the whole table here, all the classes here are actually the class interval, and you need to do the adjustment to make it become class boundaries. Okay, all right, so this is the reason why all the lower class interval in example 12, okay, start with the 1. It is because of this hint given, okay, in the example 12. But if you look at example 13, for example 13, right, you can see that I actually cancel off the part 1. There's no more part 1. And this whole question didn't mention anything about 201 to 250. Okay, they just ask you straight away to calculate the mean. So for this kind of question, when they didn't give you any information, right, then you just use all the values given in the cumulative frequency table. So everything starts from 0 for this example. All right, so you can see that for example 13, all the values start from 0 for the class interval. And it makes the whole table here, all the class interval, no need to do any adjustment to make it become class boundary. All right, so this is a small details about the question that you need to know. Okay, because we realize that from year to year, right, there are a few questions that want you to convert cumulative frequency table become the histogram. So some students might ask, why sometimes I need to start from 1, but why sometimes I can start from 0? So again, to know whether you need to start from 1 or end at 9, something like that, you need to check the question. Okay, so the question itself will always give you a hint, just like the example 12. Okay, so if no problem, then we will continue to example 14.
Okay. So just now, they link the calculation for mean from the cumulative frequency table. So for example 14 is another one. They actually try to link the mean together with the histogram, and especially it is the unequal width histogram because you see the word frequency density. Okay, so this is another type. So not only you learn the histogram, cumulative frequency graph, but you actually need to link everything together to make sure that you know how to apply them in calculation. Okay. All right. So let's have a look for example 14 here. Okay. So these are the table they give you. So here they say a histogram is drawn with a scale of 1 cm to 1 unit on the vertical axis. So the vertical axis means y-axis. So that means frequency density lah. So for frequency density, it means that 1 cm is 1 unit. Okay, and then here they said the 1 to 10 rectangle has the height 3 cm. Okay, so this is a very important information. That means the height 3 cm means you are having 3 units. Okay, for the first rectangle here, it is actually 3 units, 3 cm height. Okay, all right. So now first, they want you to calculate the value of x. And after that, they want to calculate the height of 51 until 70. Okay, so how can we start with this question? So this question, the very first part is they link it with the frequency density. Okay, so maybe I will try to write out the formula first. Okay, wait. All right, so now, first part. What is the formula for frequency density already? Since they link it with frequency density, right? So I try to write the formula for frequency density first. So it is actually frequency divided by width. Okay, so I'm looking for the first class now. Okay, so for the first class, they tell you that the height is 3 cm. That means the frequency is 3 cm. Oh, sorry, frequency density is 3. And then for frequency, what's the frequency shown in the table? It is 2x divided by the width. Okay, so can anyone tell me what is the width for this class? Is it a 9? If you put in a 9, it is wrong. It is not a 9. Okay, you shouldn't take 10 minus 1. Okay, to get a 9. So this is wrong. What is the correct width? The width, you have to check whether you have class boundary or not. So this one is 10, this one is 11, right? Therefore, to get the width, you have to adjust the class into class boundary. So you should have 0.5 minus 10.5. So to get the width, it should be 10.5 minus 0.5, and the correct width should be 10. Okay, so from here, if you continue with your calculation, 2x is equals to 30, and therefore your x will be equals to 15. So this is the value of x. And after that, they want you to calculate the height of this rectangle. Okay, so now I look at this rectangle now. Okay, so height means the frequency density, right? So again, you use the formula again. Frequency density equals to frequency divided by width. Okay, so what's the frequency here? X, so it is 15 divided by the width. So what is the width here? Class boundary should be 50.5 until 70.5. Therefore, you should divide it by 20. So from here, you get 0.75. Therefore, you can actually tell them that the height is the frequency density, which is equals to 0.75 cm. Okay, all right. So part number 1, we haven't included the mean yet. Okay, this is purely on frequency density formula only. Okay, then after you are done with the first part, let us continue to the second part now. Second part, they want you to estimate the value for mean already. Okay, all right. So the same thing happened. If you are slow, you can actually create the table to help you, okay, to visualize everything. Okay, so let's have a look for the table. Okay, for class boundary, as what I told you just now, okay, you have to adjust the value to become 0.5 until 10.5. Okay, and the second class boundary will be 10.5 until 20.5, and so on. How about class width? So for class width, first class is 10, second class is 10, the third one is whatsoever, you try to complete yourself. And then for the midpoint, first midpoint is 5.5, the second midpoint is 15.5, and the rest. Okay, so frequency, you fill in the frequency according to the x. So like the first one is 2x, right? Frequency is 2x, means 2 times 15, you get a 30. The second frequency is 4x. So 4x means 4 times 15, you get 60, and the rest. Okay, then after that, you get the formula for the value for f multiplied with midpoint. So this one will be 165 for the first one, the second one will be 930, and also please complete the rest for me. Okay, so this part will be 285, and then this one you have 7567.5. Okay, and after that, if you want to calculate the mean for part, I will show you the steps also. I will just tell you the final answer. So the final answer should be 26.6. Okay, so please complete this table and try to get the mean which is equals to 26.6 down. So from here you see, if let's say just now in part number 1, you don't know how to use the frequency density concept to get the x, then generally you won't be able to calculate the mean as well. Can see that or not? So all these are linked with each other. So make sure that you are very clear about all this. Okay, so for this video, we'll stop here. And then maybe during the face-to-face class or in the next video, we'll discuss about the variability of data. All right, so for today, for this video, we only focus on the mean maybe. All right, okay.